Hello, hello, hello there. Greetings, divine greetings. We're back with another pranic reading, taking another look inside the Pranic World Book. And this is from Cristiana ELTRAYAN, one of today's modern sages of the ages. And this playlist is inside the Pranic pages. So if you haven't seen Chapter 1 and also the intro when we begun, you can go back to those by clicking on the playlist called Pranic Pages. And this is Jerome Shaw, host of the Open Palm Podcast, motivator, meditator, coming at you with another reading as we're proceeding. And this part of the Pranic World Book is called An Unaccounted Source of Energy. Unaccounted for. What has been unaccounted for, right? Let's talk about it. At the end of the 19th century, Wilbur Atwater and Francis Benedict allegedly found evidence that the human metabolism essentially is the same as combustion in inorganic nature. Nearly 100 years later, their studies were replicated in the 1970s and 80s with better instruments and measuring methods, and suddenly the almighty calorie theory became flawed and even disproved. But this scientific knowledge still did not reach the mainstream. From 1972 on, Dr. Paul Webb, a specialist in calorimetry and metabolic research, conducted with his research team a series of scientific studies trying to replicate the experiments of Atwater and Benedict with improved calorimeters. Dr. Webb worked especially in the field of aerospace medicine, and in the 1960s developed for NASA a new suit calorimeter that allowed measurements on a whole new level, and that questioned the universal validity of calorie theory in the human body on a fundamental basis. The revolutionary results, which were published in 1980 in the renowned peer-reviewed American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, pointed to a crucial discrepancy between the theoretical amount of energy produced by metabolism, the results of indirect calorimetry, measuring the consumption of oxygen and production of carbon dioxide, and the actual measurable by direct calorimetry amount of energy produced by the body. This discrepancy was up to 23%, the so-called unmeasured energy, meaning that in some cases, for nearly a quarter of the energy produced in the test persons, the scientists had no explanation at all. Can you imagine? And the study states, the greater the food deficit, the larger was the unmeasured energy. Let me say that one more time. Hey there. The greater the food deficit, the larger was the unmeasured energy. Meaning that the unmeasured energy increased when the food decreased. Rings a bell? During the Pranic Consciousness Summit, we interviewed more than 20 specialists in pranic nourishment, the state of being nourished by chi, and pranic science, the science of using and harnessing free energy. To be able to comprehend this possibility and how it works. Each one has his own method, but they all agree that a balanced lifestyle and meditation are part of the process. We talked about this last time. Meditation is the foundation. The interviews can be assessed at soulhealingacademy.com/events. Dr. Paul Webb, a specialist in metabolic research, developed for the NASA a revolutionary suit calorimeter that allowed measurements of the human energy balance on a new level with groundbreaking results. After years of research, Dr. Paul Webb and his team published the groundbreaking results of their studies on the human energy balance in the renowned American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. Dr. Webb's work not only exposes the flaws of the calorie theory, but implicates that the human body receives energy from an unknown source, unmeasured energy from nothing. And the greater the food deficit, the larger was the unmeasured energy. The results were so groundbreaking that Dr. Webb started to look at other studies concerning the same subject, beginning with the work of Atwater and Benedict. In all, he found 52 studies comparing direct and indirect calorimetry, which were applicable to his inquiry. What he found confirmed the results of his own laboratory work. He wrote, "The more careful the study, the more clearly there is evidence of energy not accounted for." Faced with this evidence of energy not accounted for, the author felt that it was necessary to introduce a new term into the calculation of energy balance. The term QX, energy coming from an unknown source, or energy out of nothing. Although the findings of Dr. Webb will probably need a few more decades to change the Western scientific understanding of the human body and the vital energy, the Eastern medical traditions are well aware of this mysterious QX energy. They just have different names for it. In China, they call it Qi. In India, Prana. Wilhelm Reich called it organ. And who knows, perhaps even the mysterious, undetectable, dark energy that permeates the whole universe has something to do with it. What the study calls energy not accounted for, QX, or unmeasurable energy, could be connected to the energy that is called Qi by the Chinese, or Prana in the Indian tradition. Since 1998, mainstream science accepts that only 4.9% of the known universe consists of ordinary energy and matter. 26.8% consist of dark matter. And an incredible 68.3% consist of dark energy. Dark energy is an invisible and undetectable energy that permeates the whole cosmos, and so all our cells, right? Just like Qui-Gon Jinn talked about the living force. You know, may the force be with you. The force is all around you. The force is within you. Without the force, there would be no source. Without the source, there would be no force, right? So this is why we endorse the power of the force that's coming straight from the source, of course. Is it possibly connected to the unmeasurable energy that also sustains our body? This is good stuff, y'all. This is really good stuff. I'm liking this. Are you liking this? The science behind pranic nourishment, breatharianism. As we have met many people who are nourished by light, chi, prana to various degrees, and also practice this lifestyle, right? It's a style of living, right? It's not just the ability or the power you've been given. This is a style of living. It's a lifestyle, a practice. We're researching the possibility from the scientific perspective. Here's what we found in an article from Q4LT. 8 weeks is considered the overall threshold for the average human's ability to survive without food. There have been cases in human history where the time frame has been substantially shortened, as well as lengthened tremendously. A rather obvious reason for the consumption of food is due to the energy it gives us as the end result of the metabolic process. A less obvious reason amongst the general public is for the production of a coenzyme called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This coenzyme is considered the energy of cells, organs, and ultimately life as a whole. When malfunctions take place in terms of ATP production and recycling, our bodies begin to degrade and or die. When our ATP levels are normalized and robust, we are very likely to be in great health. Melatonin. Here we go now. Food has always been considered a necessity in terms of ATP production and maintaining our bodily functions. The process of food metabolism has been well documented over the past decades. However, after continuing to look further into the effects of melatonin and the potentiality for internal DMT production, it is rather clear that these hormones provide a platform far greater than simply helping us to regulate our sleep patterns. The most common usage of melatonin is in the form of an over-the-counter pill for the treatment of sleep disorders. Less commonly known effects of melatonin are its still powerful antioxidant capabilities, in addition to its role in the protection or regulation of nuclear and mitochondrial DNA. An extremely interesting byproduct of mitochondrial regulation is the subsequent regulation of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, production and recycling. In 2002, in the International Journal of Biochemistry and Cell Biology, a study outlined the increased production of ATP in rat brain and liver mitochondria from melatonin administration. A year later, in 2003, Advances in Experimental Medicine and Biology published a study on the effects of melatonin on mitochondrial regulation. The effects of melatonin led to a normalization of ATP production. Another study in 2005 in the Journal of Pineal Research, the pineal gland, outlined the role of melatonin administration on liver bile flow and ATP levels for rats with liver problems. It was found that ATP levels were elevated from the melatonin. A 2006 study in the Neuroendocrinology Letters was done on the role of melatonin given to septic mice. The dying mice had been running at an ATP deficit until the administration of melatonin. The results concluded that melatonin was able to normalize the production of ATP. So we're starting to see the connection here. Here is a list of a few more peer-reviewed studies on melatonin's positive effects on ATP regulation and production. And it goes on to list 2001, the Federation of American Societies for Experimental Biology. 2002, the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences. 2004, the Life Sciences. 2007, Free Radical Research. 2007, Federation of European Biochemical Sciences. 2007, Journal of Pineal Research. 2008, Experimental Gerontology. 2009, Journal of Pineal Research. 2009, Toxicology Letters. 2011, International Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. And 2013, the European Journal of Pharmacology. It's difficult to decipher just how many studies can be cited regarding the positive effect that melatonin has on mitochondrial function and subsequently ATP production and regulation. There appear to be dozens, if not many, many more, both directly and indirectly related. The next question I present is in regards to endpoints. Since our basis for eating is largely predicated on converting the food we eat into ATP, what happens when we focus solely on ATP production regardless of the method? Woo! Now we just gonna take a quick little breath on that, right? Just a quick little breath, let that marinate, let that sink in. Since the basis for eating is largely predicated on converting the food we eat into ATP, right, this energy, what happens when we focus solely on ATP production regardless of the method? If a person was producing melatonin in quantities above and beyond that of the average human, could they potentially produce enough ATP to survive indefinitely? Quite the question. It's a good question. Why isn't anybody else asking this question? And she even goes on to say, that is purely a theoretical question, or could it be a legitimate question? The hormones behind hunger. Even if a person was producing 5 times the amount of melatonin of the average person, which provided all the ATP their body could ever need, how would they be able to deal with those gnawing hunger pains every time lunchtime came around? Oh. There are 2 hormones that control our hunger: leptin and ghrelin. Leptin is thought to have at least 2 major functions. First, it binds to receptors in the appetite center in the brain, regulating brain cells that tell you how much to eat. Think about that. They tell you how much to eat. Second, it increases sympathetic nervous system activity, which stimulates fatty tissue to burn energy. And as we know, with the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, you know that fight or flight is that sympathetic, but that rest and relaxation vibration is the parasympathetic. And what puts you in the parasympathetic? Breath work. This we know now. Now this we know. Higher levels of leptin in the body lead to appetite suppression. More appetite suppression, less stress, less aggression. Starting to put these pieces together. I love it when a plan comes together. Ghrelin is released primarily in the stomach and is known as the appetite increaser hormone. When the stomach is empty, ghrelin is secreted. When the stomach is stretched from eating, secretion stops. So think about it. If you've ever felt full, right? I'm part Jamaican. There's a saying that they had in Jamaica, I remember. Eat till you belch, right? Eat till your stomach is distended. Eat till you can't even bend it, right? And, you know, if you've ever felt bloated, if you've ever felt that feeling, you know, for some people, they don't feel satisfied until they get to that feeling. That was me. That was me. That was my normal, you know? So I paid the price for that being my normal, for my stomach being full like that, being bloated, being goaded into eating more and more and more. Then constipation was my normal. Indigestion was my normal. You know, all those heart pangs, heartburn, all those, you know, like everything, that was my normal. All those ads for Pepto-Bismol, you know, when they list them all. That was my normal, right? So when the stomach is stretched from eating, this secretion stops. But when the stomach is empty, this secretion starts. Ghrelin is secreted. An interesting observation made in 2012 in the Journal of Comparative Neurology is that the receptor for ghrelin is found on the same exact cells in the brain as the receptor for leptin. The relationship between these two hormones, leptin and ghrelin, and melatonin is an intriguing one, to say the least. You don't say. Melatonin appears to have a positive effect on leptin levels based on this 2000 study published in a Journal of Biosciences, as well as these 2007 and 2009 studies published in Acta Biologica Hungaria. Say that 10 times fast. While the experiments took place in mice, rats, and minks being fed externally derived melatonin, so they fed them melatonin. It's interesting nonetheless that the melatonin group exuded significantly higher plasma leptin levels than the control group. It is also rather intriguing that melatonin appears to have a negative effect on ghrelin levels, showcased in this 2001 study published in the journal Endocrine, and this 2008 study published in Regulatory Peptides. A 2010 study in the journal Hormonal Behavior outlines melatonin's rolling appetite regulation of the zebrafish and specifically addresses the increase in genes codifying for molecules involved in decreased appetite, such as leptin, and reduction in the major appetite stimulators such as ghrelin. It appears as though melatonin's profound effects on leptin and ghrelin levels within the body can answer our question about dealing with that gnawing pain of hunger. With sustained melatonin levels in the body, it'd seem as though you would have the very theoretical potential to never even get hungry, while possibly maintaining adequate levels of ATP. Whew! Now, between you, me, and the tree, doesn't that sound like living free? More ATP is living free between you and me, building the chi. You feel me, family? Okay? I'm loving this. The pineal gland. In 2011, a study published in the World Journal of Gastroenterology titled Distribution, Function, and Physiological Role of Melatonin in the Lower Gut outlines some key aspects of melatonin in the digestive tract. According to the study, the lower gut contains at least 400 times more melatonin than the pineal gland. Whew! Go ahead and rewind that. In a 1992 study, dang, I was only 2 years old, on mice in the Journal of Pineal Research, a 24 to 48 fast induced increased levels of melatonin in all investigated tissues, particularly the stomach and the brain. The stomach, and the brain. It's also interesting to note the general environment of the average person is developed in developed countries as it pertains to melatonin production. The negative effect of electromagnetic fields, which right here, television, Wi-Fi, computers, electrical towers, our phones, right? On pineal gland melatonin secretion have been presented in a 1993 study published in Biomedicine and Pharmacotherapy, and in the journal Radiation Protection Dosimetry in 2013. There have also been numerous studies presented on the negative effect of blue light, mobile phone, television, computer, on melatonin levels. This is why I wear blue light blockers at night. I have glasses that block the blue light because it definitely has an effect on melatonin levels, and it mimics the sun. The blue light makes you think like you're still in daylight when you're actually not at nighttime. So, people who spend time in front of screens like I used to do, playing video games and watching Netflix and chill late at night, we might become ill late at night when we chill late at night in front of all these screens, So let's see what it all means. Knowing the effect that elevated melatonin levels have on leptin, ghrelin as hunger suppressants, it isn't all that surprising that an environment that inhibits melatonin production would likely lead to the potentiality for overeating and subsequently an obese population. Now, let's just take one little breather here. So we talk about, right, Netflix and chill, right, late at night. And we even have words like, oh, I'm just having a midnight snack, eating something late in the evening, a midnight snack. These things are normal within this society. May not be in all societies, but in this society right here, it's normal, to eat very late in the evening, to eat when the sun has gone down, and to always have electronics and technology around. This is normal. So it says that it isn't surprising that in an environment within this, that we start to begin this inhibition of melatonin production that leads to us overeating, overconsumption, right? And subsequently an obese population, as late at night when you're eating and the body is trying to rest, it's not trying to digest, right? So think about that. So far, we have established the following properties of melatonin: regulation of mitochondrial function leading to ATP production, powerful antioxidant capabilities, regulation of leptin and ghrelin levels, sleep aid hormone. Now moving on to living on light and sun gazing. And sun gazing was something that I started when I began this pranic journey, which definitely allowed more light into the body in more ways than one. But we have only begun. Living on light and sun gazing. The reason for asking these probing questions is based upon having viewed an interesting documentary titled "In the Beginning, There Was Light." In this documentary, there are numerous cases of people claiming to be able to live without eating food. Go figure. In some cases, the people even claim to be able to live without eating food or drinking water. Some of these subjects claim to have gone years without ingesting food or water. After watching the documentary and seeing the analysis done in a hospital setting by doctors and scientists verifying some of these claims, albeit in a short term, 10 days spurt, my question then became, if by outside chance this is a legitimate phenomenon, how could a human theoretically pull it off? Ellie Tom would always say that. How can we pull this off? You know, questions are the answer, right? When you ask different questions, different answers start coming to you. How can I pull this off? Right? Just ask that question. One of the theories behind this type of alternative lifestyle by subjects themselves is that they were living off light, right? The photonutrition, the ionic nutrition, photosynthesis, right? What these plants are doing, what these trees are doing. Why can't we do the same? I have no idea what this encompasses, as it has no measurable or scientific equivalent currently. One of the subjects, Michael Werner, holds a PhD in chemistry and wrote a book about this experience titled Life from Light. Is it possible to live without food? A scientist reports on his experiences. The book provides some valuable insight with a first-hand analytical perspective from a science-grounded skeptic. Now, the man was a skeptic, and it shows his perspective. And that's why it's even more pertinent to put out into the collective, right? This perspective, I love it. You know, a good amount of skepticism is healthy. Ellie Tom would tell this as well. You know, he's like, even I was a skeptic, right? Skepticism is good. You should be skeptical. Skepticism might actually lead you to the truth. In fact, it's more than likely. The only subject who tangibly ingested a form of light throughout the documentary was a man known as Hira Ratan Manek, or HRM, for those who know him. Manek discusses the practice of sun gazing, in which he looks directly at the sun, only beginning at sunrise and continuing for 44 minutes and starting 44 minutes prior to sunset. So these are both the optimum times to sun gaze. 1 hour before sun, or 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset. He states that a potential byproduct of engaging in this practice is the possibility of being able to live without ingesting food. I love that. A byproduct. Imagine that. A byproduct, you know? Oh yes, I'm gazing at the sun and, you know, not eating, not being hungry, not ingesting food, that's a byproduct, right? Neurologist George C. Brainard, PhD from the Thomas Jefferson University and leading expert on neuroendocrine physiology, reportedly observed Manek in 2002. Alongside Brainard was neuroscientist Andrew Newberg, who is certified in internal and nuclear medicine. The biggest takeaway in the study, from my perspective, was the reported measurement of Manek's pineal gland, which I remember talking with one of my good friends, Jesse. Shout out to Jesse Tree. And he talks about HRM's pineal gland, which was like massive, compared to the average human being. And the thing that he did differently, the thing that he did that deviated, was having direct contact with the sun through his eyes. So by having that contact through his eyes, is it any surprise that an abnormally large pineal gland would become an occurrence in that man? According to this study published in the American Journal of Neuroradiology, the average pineal gland size amongst fully matured adults approximately measures 7.4 millimeters in length and 6.9 millimeters in width. According to the study conducted by Newberg and Brainard, Manek's pineal gland measured 11 millimeters in length and 8 millimeters in width. Woo! And all he's doing is looking at the sun 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes in the evening. And that's all this energy he receiving, right? This consciousness he's perceiving, right? This cosmic communication that he's perceiving. Think about it. The significance of Manek's pineal gland size is based on the potentiality for exuding enhanced overall pineal function, as well as potentially producing an elevated amount of melatonin in comparison to the average person. Whether there is a correlation between his abnormally large pineal gland, increased melatonin secretion, and his self-purported abilities to sustain himself without eating food has yet to be verified. And now we get into a breatharian's lifestyle. The next analysis of these breatharian subjects would be lifestyle, a style of living. Much like the field of epigenetics has outlined the fact that external and environmental factors directly affect which genes get turned on or off, the daily routine of breatharians must be analyzed in terms of potential melatonin production. Simply from viewing the documentary, it would appear that a combination of meditation, quietness, and breathing exercises would likely be a part of their daily routines. So a combination of meditation, quietness, and breath work. It's a good recipe, right? These are good ingredients within the recipe. Not saying that they're the be-all, end-all, but they can get some work done within the vessel of anyone. In 2000, the scientific journal Biological Psychology published a study in which nighttime plasma melatonin levels were measured amongst experienced meditators. The conclusion of this study is that it showed significantly higher plasma melatonin levels in the period immediately following meditation compared with the same period at the same time on a control night. Studies on meditation. In 2004, in the Medical Science Monitor, a study was published with measured melatonin plasma levels in experienced meditators compared to non-meditators. During the study, it was confirmed that the experienced meditators exuded an average of 58% higher plasma melatonin level compared to the control group during a normal waking state. Interestingly enough, the study also showcased the fact that plasma melatonin levels temporarily decreased each hour during a 3-hour meditative practice for the experienced meditators, but not the control group. The study didn't extend to verifying plasma melatonin levels in the hours following the completion of the meditation session. In 2012, in the journal Frontiers in Neurology, an extensive review was done on meditation and its regulatory role in sleep. According to unpublished data in the paper, experienced meditators had melatonin levels nearly 500% greater than non-meditators. Here is the excerpt. Diurnal, which just means daytime, as opposed to nocturnal, diurnal melatonin levels were found to be significantly high in meditators than non-meditating controls. In 2010, in the publication Journal of the Formosan Medical Association, a study was done on nighttime melatonin levels from Chinese original quiet sitting. The conclusion of the study was that quiet sitting could be used as a psychophysiological stimulus to increase internal melatonin production. Conscious breathing. In 2011, in the journal Evidence-Based Complementary Alternative Medicine, a study was published on the effects of diaphragmatic breathing and its effects on the body. The study concluded that the diaphragmatic breathing group exhibited approximately a 42% greater level of nocturnal salivary melatonin levels compared to the control group. Brainwaves and pranism. When observing the general premise for how breatharianism is a possibility, it would appear that it's almost as if they are creating a condition of light sleep or even self-hypnosis during their waking hours. In fact, it wouldn't be surprising if the breatharians spent the majority of their waking state not in the beta brainwave. Now, of course, you understand brainwaves, where usually we spend most of the day in beta, where, we're in the busyness of our hustle and bustle, right? That's beta, just doing, that's beta. Then we go to the alpha. Alpha state goes to the theta state and the delta state. So like alpha state and theta state, we're in like meditation. Theta is even kind of deeper. And then delta, we're in deep sleep, right? Delta. So you can go through these states via meditation. You can go from the beta all the way, slipping into the alpha and the theta. And it's saying here that it wouldn't be surprising that the people who are able to manifest these abilities spend the majority of their waking state not in the beta state that most people are accustomed. This 1997 study in Biological Signals indicates that melatonin levels in the gastrointestinal tract, the GI tract, is independent to pineal gland production of melatonin. This signifies that it could be possible that without the burden of food in the GI tract, the GI produced melatonin is potentially free to recirculate throughout the entire system. What did Ralph Smart say? Slow motion this side. What? Deep divers, right? Much like this 1992 study in Journal of Pineal Research shows, this study showcased significantly elevated levels of melatonin on the brain after fasting, which could point to the potentiality that an increase of internally produced DMT might be in order. So we understand that we can actually produce DMT internally. You don't actually need an outside substance to do what you can do within you. Who knew? Much like the 2014 paper in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences showcases the innate human ability to control our nervous and immune systems when specifically altering our internal environment, we must study the EEG brainwaves and breathing patterns, lung capacity of these breatharians. If strange phenomena tends to occur when people are outside the common beta brainwave state, it would not be unreasonable to make the hypothesis that breatharians are likely operating predominantly outside of beta brainwave during their waking hours, especially if they are exuding significantly higher levels of melatonin compared to the average person. This 1996 study in Neuroscience Letters details the effects of daytime administration of melatonin. The study concludes that the externally ingested melatonin correlated with an increase in alpha and theta brainwaves according to the EEG measurements. The 5 brainwaves, beta, alpha, theta, delta, and gamma, all signify varying levels of brain functionality and mental alertness. And gamma brainwave, that's a big one too. You know, the Incredible Hulk, that's gamma, right? And I believe that, there was one time where I was practicing psychokinesis, or like moving something with your mind. And I even have it on camera where I was able to make an object move. It was like a pinwheel. And there was no fan, there was nothing blowing around. So I made this object move just by putting my hands around it and just using my mind and visualizing it moving. And hours went by. And on the camera, you can see when you speed it up on the camera, because I did this in a time lapse just to see it turning. Hours went by and I was so focused. And this little pinwheel was just moving ever so slightly. And I got it to move this way and I got it to move that way. And what I think happened, because 5 hours went by like that. I think I was in gamma. I think I was in the gamma brainwave. So there's so many things that can happen when we tap into these brainwaves. Signify varying levels of brain functionality and mental alertness. I was very alert, I can tell you that. I was very focused. Alpha and especially theta correlate with a transition into a more relaxed state compared to that of beta. Now, living without thirst. What about the lack of necessity for water concept? This is likely to be one of the most mind-bending aspects of this phenomena, as most people can somehow fathom not eating for prolonged periods, but foregoing water would appear unquestionably dangerous to the masses. The pituitary gland produces a hormone called vasopressin, which acts as an antidiuretic hormone. The primary function of this hormone is to regulate the retention of water by acting to increase water reabsorption in the kidneys, collecting ducts, as well as decreasing perspiration. So it's like the body is like, we need to hold on to this water for a little bit. Vasopressin plays a key role in homeostasis as it regulates the levels of water, glucose, and salts in the blood. In 1997, a study published in the journal Brain Research Bulletin outlined the effects of melatonin administration on vasopressin secretion in rats. The results showcased that significantly greater amounts of melatonin administration caused an increase in vasopressin levels, while lesser amounts of melatonin had no effect, or decreases in vasopressin secretion. Could this potentially explain the ability of breatharians to forgo the necessity for consistent intake of water? Staying consistent with the potentiality for these subjects to constantly produce abnormally high levels of melatonin, compared to the general population, it appears that it might be key. Theoretically speaking, it'd be absolutely essential for a breatharian to have the innate ability to maintain blood plasma homeostasis consistently. The question that now arises is, what role does DMT play in all of this? If you have followed the Q4LT theme, it is our general belief that there is a definitive relationship between melatonin production, dimethyltryptamine, DMT, synthesis, and respiratory alkalosis, with the entire focus of the breatharian lifestyle appearing to be predicated on optimizing melatonin levels while inducing various levels of periodic alkalosis from breathing techniques. We do believe that DMT could very well be a factor in the potentiality for this lifestyle to perpetuate itself in reality. When studying all phenomena, especially as it pertains to the human experience, it is rather clear that assessing different regions of the brain might lead to assessing innate abilities that have yet to be explained and or documented thoroughly. Yes, it's clear that this topic is extremely controversial, especially as it pertains to millions of starving humans around the world. The general argument is that if breatharianism is a true innate potentiality for the human, why do people still starve to death? It's an age-old question. It's a very important question to ask, and I would theorize simply from a narrow viewpoint that the external and internal environments of breatharians versus those suffering from malnutrition or starvation are likely very different based on EEG measurements, melatonin levels, stress markers, and breathing patterns, leading to a vast difference in hormone secretion and gene expression using basic epigenetic principles. If it is true that the study of breatharianism is undertaken in controlled conditions that drastically suppress melatonin production and upset circadian rhythms, it would be rather inconclusive based on the outlined effects that melatonin has on mitochondrial function, ATP production, leptin, ghrelin, brainwave patterns, and a potential linkage to DMT. See how it's all coming together? On the other hand, Dr. Michael Werner, a breatharian subject, has undergone 2 stringent 10-day medical studies in controlled environments with success. One of those 10-day studies took place in October 2004 at Linden Hospital in Bern, Switzerland, and was funded by the Asta Blumenfeld Foundation of Dornach, Switzerland. Werner could publish his experience meticulously. Werner would publish his experience meticulously in this study in his book, Life from Light. The second 10-day study took place at the University of Prague in May 2007. Could the difference between success and failure in the cases of Jasmuheen and Dr. Werner be a case of distinctly different brainwave state and consequently varying melatonin production based on those waves? Just from an external perspective, observation, one could make the case that Dr. Werner was under much less media scrutiny and stress, being that his study was in a clinical setting in a hospital without television involvement. His counterpart, Jasmuheen, had been a much more controversial media figure leading up to and during the showcase, which could have potentially altered her brainwave state and stress levels, leading to a distinct alteration in the homeostasis of her average melatonin production. These are just proposed theories in relation to making a case for the impossible. In the future, we will attempt to take a look at the role of glycolysis, sodium, hypophosphatemia, and vitamin D in this potential breatharian phenomena. How these factors affect and react with melatonin, phenylalanine, and dimethyltryptamine will likely be key in exploring the unknown. It's not so much that living off light isn't believable, it's more so that we believe there might be currently accepted traditional biological markers and levels that signify the distinct possibilities of this lifestyle. And we'll go ahead and put it on pause right there for the moment. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for receiving and perceiving this information. You know, this is the vibration we need more of in the nation right now to expand. The time is at hand for every woman and man all across the land. We are realizing that we can let go of I can't while knowing I can. So thank you so much for keeping in touch, and we will continue. Keep the light flowing within you.